Hi.
Hi, Kennedy. Hi,
Oh,
Kennedy.
hi. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you so, so much for honoring our invitation. We know we have just 30 minutes with you.
I'm
So,
very excited. Thank you for
yeah,
having me.
thank you more. So, we're just going to get right to it. We've been talking
Okay.
about a lot of things. So, first of all, what inspired you? Oh, before that, before I ask that question, it's been a long time since I read romance. And
Mhm.
the heat. Whew, whew. I was listening to the audiobook. The lady did a great job.
Yes, Wesley Shaban. Yes.
Yes, I was listening to it day before yesterday night, and it got to a part I was lying down. I had to turn it off, and I said, "You know what? I will listen to the rest in the daytime.
Oh,
I can see the sun when I
I
get."
love that. Yes, she
Yeah.
and Jacoby is the male narrator, and they do a fantastic job. They really do.
All right. So tell us what inspired you to write this story.
Well, I've talked about this a lot actually over the last, what has it been now, like 7 months that the book has been out. It's actually the first novel I ever wrote. So I wrote this novel 15 years ago, even though it just released last year, and I never planned to publish it. And so I have to think back, like 15 years, what was I thinking when I wrote this book? My husband actually reminded me about it when my agent was asking for something like what's next after I wrote a book called Real. And after that book, my agent was like, what's next? And I kind of had no idea. And I was talking to my husband. He's like, what about that divorce book you wrote? And literally it was 15 years ago, and the book was very different then than it is now. Like, it had the two main characters, it had the two kids, it had the restaurant, it had the aunt, it didn't have the friend group, it didn't have any of the therapy. I always say that it had all the hurt and none of the healing. And I think that when I wrote this book, gosh, I guess we had hit like our 10-year anniversary, my husband and I, and we were having a hard time, just like life things that happen and that test you and your relationship. And I think that just kind of got my wheels turning, and it was like things that just happened to you in life that were testing us, which is really what happens to them. It's not that they don't love each other, it's that when life happens hard, they don't realize that they don't have the tools to really weather the storm. They don't have the tools to know how to grieve, and kind of, make it through together. I think one of not my favorite lines, but a line from the book that stands out for me is when Yasmin says, we were completely incompatible in our grief. And so I think we were probably weathering some of that ourselves, just figuring out how to do hard things in life together. So that's probably a big part of it.
Okay. And I like the fact that even though you were telling a love story, you were able to touch on very important issues like depression
Mm-hmm.
and therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were able to touch on that. Talk to us about that. Why did you feel the need to bring in these key issues? Because I'm looking at it in the Black community. A lot
Mm.
of us still struggle with going for therapy. I'm Nigerian and I'm still very African. I always go, I'm not going to talk to any stranger. I will pray about it. So yeah. So why did you feel the need to bring in these key themes?
You mentioned in the beginning, you said, that you don't read a lot of romance. I find that there are a lot of people who don't read a lot of romance who read my books. And I love that. And that's usually because it's not just the love story. Like, there's always other things that I'm very interested in. I have a series called that's two books, The Kingmaker and the Rebel King. And if you read that, it's romance, but it's also like missing and murdered Indigenous women. And it's, all these other climate science. For me, it's like I'm never interested in just seeing specifically a woman only in the context of her love interest or only in the context of her love story. Usually there's something that has like spurred me to write that book, and it's usually not the love story. For me, it's like I'm interested, as I kind of retooled this book, I was diagnosed with depression myself while I was writing the book. And I know how difficult it is for our community, Black people,
Yeah.
but also even more specifically, Black men often prove very resistant to therapy. And so usually when I write a book, there are intentions, and I had intentions about people reading about Black women, kind of debunking that strong Black woman myth, Not that we're not strong, but we're also vulnerable. And when life happens, we bend, we break, and we should be given space like anyone else to kind of like figure our own humanity out. So, those are kind of like things that I was wrestling with myself. And even the hesitancy about therapy, the hesitancy about medication was something that I wrestled with. I grew up in, a faith-based home, and in a faith-based like environment. And it was always like, there's nothing that you have that, God can't fix, so why do you need therapy? Why do you need medicine? And it takes years, I think, even when you think that you have deprogrammed a lot of that, you find it in yourself. You keep bumping into some of those kind of original core beliefs in yourself. And you're like, wait a minute, I don't actually believe that anymore. I do believe in therapy. I do believe medication can help. And so I think that what people find in my book is all of these intentions I have. And one of the things that usually I'm looking for when I'm writing a book is intellectual curiosity, like something has made me curious. There's something I want to learn about. And thus, there's something I want my readers to learn about beyond just the love story.
Okay. I like when the conversation we had before you joined us, I said, one thing I liked about this book was you didn't bring in church.
Right. Right.
I'm very, very happy about that, because when we talk of grieving, I'm looking at it from a traditional society, traditional African, maybe Caribbean society, where people go, oh, have you prayed about it?
Right.
And what has happened to you hasn't happened. It's happened to so many other people. So, deal with it. Yeah. But I want to explore their love. I like that, even though, because I was trying to understand why they got divorced. And I realized that it was in the process of grieving, she was the one who asked for divorce.
Yes.
I'm trying to explore their love. And I remember I was asking everybody that, maybe because I'm a hopeless romantic, I believe that you would only love one person a lifetime, and maybe that person might not necessarily be the best for you, but other people explained to me that no, you can love different people at different times. And from what I gathered from what they said love is a decision, love is a choice, love is an action, and how you know it's love is when you go through tough times. So talk to us about Yasmin and Josiah's love, because Josiah was very protective of her. I like that. Very protective of her. Yes. Yeah, they were not enemies because they were divorced.
No. And I think a lot of times when we see divorce or when we see custody issues, it's like baby mama drama. It's like, I'm really not interested in my characters conducting themselves that way necessarily in this story. In this story, I wanted to show two mature people, I call it's like grown folk love, these are people who are, 39 years old, 40 years old, people who have lived a lot of life together. And who genuinely care about each other, still love each other. But there are situations where love isn't enough, where sometimes things happen and it could just be the way we respond differently. And it makes us on really different pages during those times in our lives. I like to think a lot of people talk about how my books make people cry, how it's like, it's sad girl books, and I think that it's just, for me, it's like real life books, like I don't think of, some people think of romance as pure escapism. And I think that the aspect of romance that's escapism for me is the fact that you always have a happily ever after. Like, because that doesn't happen in real life, for me, that's enough escapism. I'm very interested in dealing with real life. And I think that romance is a very safe landscape to have difficult conversations like that, because you're guaranteed a happily ever after. But I think of my books as a crucible, if you think about in chemistry, or, you would have like that white porcelain dish when I was growing up, and you would put elements in it, you would like set it on fire, and you see what's left, like everything that's impure burns away. And I think sometimes that's how life is, and when our love is tested, I think sometimes that's when it shines brightest. Not that it has to be, but I think about times in my own life and in my own relationship and my marriage when we were drawn the closest is when we were going through something really hard. But the opposite can be true, is that when you as a couple are going through something really hard, it either draws you closer or it presses you apart. And you decide what you're going to do with that response. I think that in Yasmin's case, it was complicated by the fact that she was suffering a severe depression along with suicidal ideation. And I've heard some people say, why couldn't she just get herself together? Like, why couldn't she just? And I'm like, that's actually the very dismissive attitude that I wrote this book to combat, is why can't we just pull ourselves together? And we as Black women there's an expectation of our pain is not paid attention to in the same way, whether it's medical or whether it's emotional and mental health. As I was writing this book, we had Naomi, in I think it was the U.S. Open that she withdrew from because of mental health. And we had Simone Biles, who withdrew from gymnastics because of mental health. And they were attacked, like, why would you do this? Why can't you just be strong? Why can't you just? And I think that sometimes the attitude, like, why can't you just? And I think that we, especially as Black women, have to pay attention to that, because a lot of times culture, other people are not paying attention to it for us. It's a matter of putting yourself first. And I think for Yasmin, in this extreme case, where there was depression, where there were compounded by grief, felt like putting herself first was, I can't save myself. She says this, I can't save myself and save this marriage. And she chose to save herself. And in my world, there's a happily ever after. So she gets to have both. In the real world, you don't always get that, obviously, but I'm in control. So she got to have it all.
Yeah, very, very true. Because I was saying that I liked that you touched on stillbirth here.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been pregnant, so I don't know what that feels like for people who have gone through that. And the fact that you've never experienced anything, you've never experienced something, is not an excuse to be dismissive.
Right.
That's, that situation or what someone is going through. Yeah. You do your best to offer support in any way you can. But the kind of culture, societies, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
But because of the kind of society we come from, many times they just go, just pray about it and move on. As long as you have life, you should be okay.
Yeah.
So friendships, I like that you touched on friendships here. Hendrix, Soledad, Preach. Both of them had friends that were sanctuaries to them. That were safe spaces for them. How important do you think friendships are? Because I was talking about the importance of compartmentalizing friendships, so you don't burden them with information about certain kinds of information. So how important, I like that you explored friendship here.
I think friendship is so vital. You mentioned Soledad. Her book is coming out in March, and then Hendrix's book will come out the following year.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah. Soledad's book is called This Could Be Us, and it's coming out March 5th. I'm so excited about it. We'll be revealing.
Okay, so we are going to have you back next year.
Yes, I will gladly come back. But I think friendship is very important for this group, and it's even more prominent in Soledad's story. There's a line from that book that everybody will get to read soon, which says there aren't enough sonnets for friendship. And what I mean by that is, like, all the love songs, are about romantic love, but there is platonic love, sisterly love, friendship love. Those are so vital to us to create a sense of community. And one of the things that Yasmin acknowledges that was a real big part of why she couldn't bounce back is that she found herself isolating a lot, which it's so common, especially when you are living with depression, to isolate yourself. I know from personal experience. I say in the book, Yasmin says in the book, her therapist says in the book, that depression lies to you. And it does. Like, in your head, it's like this carnival of lies, and you're constantly trying to sort through what's true and what's not. And I think one of the things that Yasmin saw was that she ended up isolating herself, even from her old friends. And it was easier for her as a part of her recovery to kind of meet these people who hadn't known her before, who hadn't known what she went with, and she connected with this new group of women. That's not to say she doesn't have, still have old friendships, but there was something fresh about this connection and this community that she built. And I just think community is so vital to our mental health, I think. and just to life, for us to have other people who see us and who are seen. And I think specifically with this friendship group, one thing I wanted to demonstrate was a diversity of orientation. When I say orientation, meaning Soledad is basically a stay-at-home mom. Hendrix is a career woman in a very pure sense who doesn't want children. And Yasmin is kind of a hybrid of that. She is, a business owner, an entrepreneur who also is the soccer mom and is also, at all the kids' things. And I really wanted for us as women to, because sometimes culture pits us against each other based on what we're doing, like, oh, you're a stay-at-home mom, so you must be lazy, you're a career mom, so you must be neglecting your kids, or you're whatever. I wanted to create this nucleus of friendship where the women are in very different places in their lives as far as their pursuits, but they respect each other, they respect their decisions and their choices, because that's the essence of feminism, is choice. Like, true feminism is choice. And not giving into prescribed notions of what we should do. So I wanted this friendship group to reflect the kind of respect I like to see among women, in real life.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. I'm going to open the floor now for anyone who has questions for Kennedy, because we have just 30 minutes. So I'm going to open the floor.
Okay.
Please feel free to ask questions. Bukola, go ahead.
I'd like to say thank you so much for this book. So more than a question, is more like a comment. I really, really appreciate it. Like Louisa, I haven't read romance in ages. I like books that are deep. But apart from the fact that I love this book, and then everybody was telling me you read more of her books, I like the statement you made earlier that you don't write just about relationships, about romance for the sake of romance. You want people to learn. You like learning about things, and that is why historical fiction is my favorite. I like learning about things. So definitely going to read. In fact, I've bought so many of your other books, just waiting to read them. So thank you very much for that. I just wanted to make a comment about what you just said about feminism being a choice. And we, just before you joined us, we had spoken for about an hour before you joined us, but we talked about Soledad's husband, about whether he was a good man or a bad man. Well, because I think a few of us said he was, we called him a name, and someone said, no, I don't think he was. I think he was okay. Yeah. But, and what Feminine said was that actually Soledad's choice at that time was to be a stay-at-home mom. But I love what you just said now about it was her choice at that time, but as girls were getting older, she should have been able to choose to do something else. She brought up confident girls, and she herself was losing her confidence when it came to her husband. So I just want to say thank you so much for introducing me to your books. They're lovely, and this was a great book. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. And I mean, I think that we should respect women who say, I don't want to work outside the home. Like, this is what I choose. I choose to build my home. I choose to raise my children. And when that's done, I'll figure out what's next. But this, for me, feels like for want of a better word, calling for this season of my life. And I want to respect that. I want to respect that as valid, and so that was a big part of it. And Soledad has her own path. She has a lot to figure out. And so I'm really excited. I don't think people will see Soledad coming, because a lot of people think she's soft, she's, whatever, because she's not ambitious in their sense, like ambitious in the way that we think. But she does have ambition. She has ambitions for her home. She has ambitions for her children. She has ambitions for herself. So I'm interested for people to meet, really meet her in her story.
Okay, thank you. Kinsey?
Hello.
Oh, I just shared your story about the Kingmaker and the
yes.
on Instagram.
It's right next to me.
Yes. How are you?
Good, and you?
I'm good.
I'm kind of starstruck. Stop.
Oh God. Yeah, right.
Oh my God. Okay. But one thing I appreciate about the book was how amicable the couple was, like the fact that they're able to work together.
Yes.
After getting divorced. I think that takes a lot of maturity, but not only that, they didn't bring drama to the children. And I feel like Deja, was her name Deja?
Her daughter?
Yeah,
Deja.
I read the book months ago, so I kind of forgot a little bit. But I I feel like her reaction was very realistic, in the sense that she thought her mom was like the evil one because she was the one who proposed the divorce. And like kids, I'm a divorced kid child, you know? So like I know the extent, I know what it does to a family. And like that's one thing that I respected from them. Also, like Louisa made a comment about how Josiah is very protective. Not only was he protective to other people, but when his daughter said some out-of-pocket things to the mother, he was
Right.
always like, no, it's not your mother's fault. Like,
Yes.
um,
And I
so
just want to say that was really key for him, because when he was defending her, Yasmin, to his daughter, he was hearing himself. And he's like, wait a minute, you know, like, why, if I'm telling her that, then I have to think about what she was going through and what led her to divorce. And some of those conversations were really key for him to understand what she was going through. You know, hearing it from Deja, he's like, wait a minute. Oh, wait, like, do I feel that way somewhere? Do I think that somewhere? So I just wanted to mention, I felt like those conversations were really pivotal for him, realizing it wasn't all Yasmin's fault either.
yeah, that's one thing that I really appreciated. Yeah. Get out of my room. Sorry, my mother came in.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Alice, I see your hand up. Okay,
Alice?
I think Alice is not there. I just wanted to ask, okay, let me see. We still have a few more minutes with you. Just talk us through your writing process. How did you write those love scenes? I really am because I write, but I need to learn, right? I need to understand. How did you write? Were you sitting outside? Were you in your room? How did you write those love scenes? Because, whoa.
Alice says I am here. Can you hear me? I just didn't want to.
No, Alice, we can't hear you. Type your question out, and
I see you now, Alice. I see you.
Can you hear me though?
Yes, I hear you. Yes.
Hi.
I didn't want to steamroll over your question if you had one.
My technology is so bad today. I just wanted to say that one of the things that I appreciate about the book is the way you have talked about therapy and how the Black community usually sees it, and the way Isaiah,
yes,
no?
Isaiah, yes,
has overcome his fear of talking. And I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't finished the book, but the way he handled it and the way he handled it through his son, that was for me the most beautiful and magical moment, because we don't talk a lot of times as family members, at least in the Black community. Those type of conversations are usually handled in a certain way or either taboo. So I did appreciate it. And I thank you, because I offered your book to my brothers, telling them, listen, don't read the book as a romance, read and definitely pay attention to what the man is going through and how he deals with it. So thank you very much. That's what I wanted to say.
And you know what? It's so funny you say that, because this book, more than any of my other books, I see women giving to their partners, giving to their male family members to talk about therapy. And that was really one of my hopes, you know, is that it would, because that's really, I'm writing that for women who have partners, women who have, you know, husbands or whomever who might be resistant, to see kind of modeling someone who is resistant in the beginning, the way their partner might be, and as hope, you know, to see that person eventually embrace therapy and make it a real part of their healing process. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Hermelin. Okay, so Hermelin, you ask your question, so Kennedy can answer my question.
Okay.
Hermelin, ask your question.
So first, I want to say thank you for such an inspiring book. The reflections are great. The balance, the jealousy, everything is a full package. Now, I want to spring to the fact that Kasim, the school eats you. When the parents went to the school, for me, that was a big one.
Yeah.
And I want to know why you went there, because I know culturally, I experienced things like that in school, where they paint the negative picture of our kids all the time. So I like that piece in there. So if you can elaborate or go with Louisa's question, that for me was important.
I think that it's funny because, you know, it's like Yasmin like has her Black mama, you know, ready. I'm ready to go. And my mom had to do that for me a lot when I was growing up. I found myself in like AP classes, where I was 1 or 2. I'm older, than you might think. So way back then, I don't know how it is as much now, but way back then, it would be me and maybe one other girl or one other guy who was Black in our AP classes. And I found myself the only one often, or one of just 2. And being in that situation, like the pressures that come with that, the expectations, the microaggressions, that come with that, I wanted to address it. And I'm from Atlanta, lived in Atlanta for 20 years, which is where this is set. And if you are ever in Atlanta, there's so much Black affluence and so much Black excellence and so much Black progressivism. I mean, we run that city, which is amazing. But that also sometimes puts us in situations where we are bumping up against so much privilege, and money doesn't give us privilege all the time, and so I wanted to paint kind of that situation where you have a family that is somewhat middle class, upper middle class, and their child, brilliant, genius, but in these situations where he's the only one, or they don't expect a Black boy to move the way he does, and the protectiveness that comes with that, and the vigilance that comes with that. I mean, here, I'm sure it's that way in Canada too, but here in America, there's such a vigilance that we have to have about our Black children, and even more specifically about our Black boys. And so that's kind of a layer of it. Is Kasim is such a special kid. He's so bright. And I really wanted to, how often are our Black boys portrayed that way? How often are our Black boys portrayed as geniuses who, get to nerd out and have parents who encourage that and love them and want to see, them become everything that they could possibly be. And so I really wanted to show Josiah and Yasmin as those parents who see their kids' potential and will literally do anything to help him reach it. And part of that is protecting him and being vigilant for him and looking for every microaggression, every bit of racism, and anything that they can protect him from and kind of walk him through. And that also draws them together as partners. It's continually forcing them into proximity with each other, their business and their children, force them into proximity together all the time, which just heightens the fact that they're still in love with each other, even though they're not together.
Loved it. You did a great job there. And for me, as a social worker, a mom, I really take that serious, because I call it the lens that they use to look at us.
Yes.
And I think we have to be vigilant, because oftentimes somebody mentioned the space that we don't have as women or Black folks to be, but it starts in the daycare. It starts in the elementary school. Like, our kids misbehaving, they do not see it as, I say misbehaving for lack of a better word, because that's the lens. They don't see it as they're exploring. So they shouldn't break something. They shouldn't be rough and tough. So I think parents, family members, we have to be more vigilant. And I really, really love that part that you brought it out. So thank you.
Right. Parenting and motherhood, fatherhood, all of that's a really big part of this series. And I think you see it even more, but you definitely see it a lot in Soledad's book. There are autistic boys in Soledad's book, 2 autistic twins. My son has autism, and I've, navigated him through from the time he was diagnosed when he was 2 through every, all the different phases, and now into young adulthood, and the vigilance that you have to have being a disabled person, but then being a Black male disabled person. It requires a level of like vigilance and intervention that it just puts you on guard, all the time. And it makes you incredibly protective. And I'm really looking forward to unpacking a lot of that in Soledad's book.
Okay, so back to my question. How did you write those steamy love scenes?
And I see it's 12:30, but I can stay a few more minutes. I'm not,
Okay,
it's not a hard out. Yes.
Okay.
I my process, like my process overall, when you talk about therapy and you talk about all the different things that I discuss in my books, you know, Kinsey, we were talking about all the King's Men, you were talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women, like all of these things are not necessarily things I know about, you know, they're not my lived experiences. My background is journalism. And so I mentioned intellectual curiosity before. There's always questions that are driving me, you know, and so I do, I approach writing books the same way I would approach writing a story, you know, as a journalist, deep research, but also lots and lots and lots of interviews with people who have those lived experiences. So that's a huge part of making sure that all of that representation and all of that lived experience feels authentic, especially for people who have lived it and come into the book. I want them to feel like this person must have lived this or done a heck of a lot of research, because that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how it is. So that's like a big part of my creative process overall is interview with those who have lived experience, research, supplemental reading, because that for me lays a foundation of understanding, authenticity, and knowledge. And then I can build on that. So that's my process overall. If you're talking specifically about sex scenes, were you asking specifically about sex scenes? Yes. Okay. It may surprise you. I don't enjoy writing sex scenes. Like sometimes I leave them for last. Like I'll write the whole book and then I'll write sex, you know, and then I come back to it later. But this is why sometimes sex scenes are very crucial for me though, because I like to write what I call unskippable sex scenes. And what I mean by that is a lot of times sometimes when I'm reading romance, when I get to the sex scene, it feels like, okay, I've seen this before. Okay, flip. You know, I start skimming sometimes because I'm like, it's just sex. And when I'm writing a sex scene, I like for it to be unskippable, meaning if you skip this sex scene, you're not just missing the sex, you're missing a tectonic shift in their relationship, because it's not just sex. There's a deepening of their relationship. There's a deepening of their intimate connection that is moving the story forward, and it's also moving their relationship forward. So if you skip this sex scene, you are missing a pivotal moment in their relationship. It's not just the bang, you know, there's a deepening that's happening for the story and for their relationship. And so when I'm writing a sex scene, if it's just like you put this part here and you put this part here, and then there's a lot of steam and there's a lot of groaning and grunting, like for me, I'm going to skip that. So I'm constantly looking for ways to infuse deeper emotion, deeper meaning, deeper understanding that they're actually learning something about each other in the context of a sex scene. So that's kind of how I approach sex.
And you went places, and I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know people do this. Oh, wow. Let me see. Okay, Lydia has a hand up, but let's do a group photo first. Then you have a question before, yeah, because
Okay.
yes. So please, those for those who have their books, put on your cameras.
Oh, I have my book.
Okay, yeah. So, okay. Okay. So, Lydia, ask your question, please.
Yes, sorry for my lateness.
Yeah,
So nice to meet you. I just want to say, first of all, you're gorgeous.
Oh gosh.
And so a couple of things. I have lived through most of the things you wrote about.
Okay.
So I didn't have a stillbirth, but I had a couple of miscarriages.
Yeah.
And yeah, I never got any therapy for it. It was just like, yeah, next, especially with Africans, right? The doctor says you can't get intimate for 3 months or 6 weeks after a miscarriage. They're just counting down to when that day is, okay? And then my mother died suddenly at 58, and 6 months after, my husband left me with 2 young children under the age of 6. So again, no therapy. It's just like you're just an autopilot, you know. So I was happy that it was triggering for me reading the book, okay? A little triggering because of some PTSD, but it was nice that there was a happy ending, right? The therapy, the shedding light. Like I've never been to therapy.
Right.
which brings me to the second part of friends. You know, sometimes surrounding yourself with good quality people that you've chosen intentionally, not just friends that, you know, a lot of folks have friends they're just putting around so you can brag to. A lot of Nigerians are like that. So you can say, oh, look what I got. I've got a bigger job. I just got the new Gucci purse, you know, whatever. So it's good to surround yourself with good quality friends. And therapy, I say, is 1 hour. But having a friend that you can talk to anytime, you know, that will call you on your PS, that will tell you, listen, wake up, that will give you tough love is priceless. And as women, we need to, you know, stick together and be each other's friends. A lot of us are quick to give a dead relationship many chances, but we give up on our girlfriends like that. You know, we should borrow each other money. I can tell you that. You know, if you have quality people, you can absolutely borrow each other money. There's on a side note, there's a story that broke off in Nigeria. This lady borrowed a man that had just been out of prison in 4 months, 100 million naira. Okay, yeah, and they got married and blah blah blah. Anyways, marriage is over, and she tried to jump off a bridge into the ocean. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to get into her head, but I'm just saying we should be more trusting of female relationships.
Right.
Even more than because I guarantee you she wouldn't have loaned another woman 100 million in a million years.
Nope.
So yeah. So and yes, and just thank you for the book. And yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kennedy. I just want to say a very big thank you. Thank you for honoring us. Yeah, it's just 30 minutes, but when
we do have I see one hand up. I don't know. I can answer that question.
No, it's
yes.
the same person. It's the same.
Oh no, it's a different person.
Genevieve, sorry.
Genevieve has.
Hi, sorry. I just
No
wanted
problem.
to, it's really short. I think most of the times we have questions for our authors, but I find this time we're just so appreciative and so thankful that, you know, you wrote a book that I think all of us can sort of connect on. It definitely spoke to me a lot. My kids are around the same age. You saw my little human earlier. I had the baby, but I've had miscarriages, and I can just totally relate to the characters. And I find that this group in itself, our book club, I'm very thankful that I found these ladies and that we can connect on a completely different level. Like, we have similar interests and we have this book club to connect us, but the conversations that we had before you came on was how we connect with our sister friends. And, you know, I look forward to, I won't lie, I picked up your book literally like Thursday. I'm about 70% done. So I'm like reading through it real quick, but
I'm glad we didn't spoil the end then.
that's okay. I read like the last page. I'm like, okay, yes, like I knew this was going to happen, but I still will finish it. But I'm just telling you that like I'm going through it real quick. I really enjoy it. I'm reading it at odd hours of the night, the morning, you know, just to catch up with this group, because we are very close knit with, like, a lot of us are very regulars in this group. But I do look forward to reading your other books, the follow-ups and everything, and that you did such a great job of just, you know, having your ups, and then just when you think that it's gonna be like, oh yeah, it's gonna get real like hardcore, I need to read this by myself, and then you hit us hard with like reality.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it is those moments where you say it's not just about sex, it's being able to connect. And those that have been in relationships or in relationships, it's true, those are those moments where you learn to really connect with your partner and have those moments. It's not always going to be like high, 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 high. You know, it's reality. It's not just. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You touched on also the friendship of between Josiah and Preach.
Mm-hmm.
Like that when you spoke about them, you mentioned that they both went to college, they graduated, and they followed their own path. And Preach's
he owns a barbershop.
Yes, was to own a barber shop, which he had always cut hair from uni, and now was a successful barber with a degree.
Yeah, with a businessman. Yes,
businessman. But you know, for us back home, people just look, you have a degree. Why are you cutting hair? Or they will say, you know, you can own the barber shop, but you can hire people to do it, and then you as a businessman. So I like that friendship, and I like that they checked in, especially checked in on his friend. Are you okay? Is everything okay? And I like how he how he protects Yasmin, because Pre said to him, how I knew this was a keeper was when you weren't willing to share information. So,
yeah,
because I have a lot of guy friends, and when they talk, they talk.
Yeah.
So for the guy to have this girl, he doesn't want to give details about, he doesn't want to say anything. He's like, okay, I see you. Yeah.
She's special. She's special.
Yeah. So I like that you touched on that. Well, Kennedy, I just want to say a very big thank you. Thank you for honoring us. And thank you for this book. Now I'm going to go look for your other books to read. We are bringing you back next year, but please, we need you for an hour. 30 minutes is too.
I will. I'm under deadline and I've been traveling a lot. So I've been kind of boiling everything down to protect my time, but I really enjoy being with you guys. And if you're looking, a lot of people ask me, what should I read after before I let go from you? I always recommend Real. If you are looking for another book of mine to read, Real is the one I always recommend. So I mean, I have a lot of them, but that's the one I usually recommend to people. Christy says she's listening. And I was going to say, if you like audiobooks, that's the way to experience Real is through audio. Absolutely.
Yes, thank you for the recipe.
Yes, so many people cook the pound cake and like they prepare the pancakes and all that stuff and tag me on pictures. It's so cool. So I love that.
Yeah, for the pound cake, I saw it and I said, well, since I'm on a healthy eating journey, I'm going to substitute the flour for oats. I'm going to try.
Oh, very good. I want to see that.
Try with oats and see what happens. So yeah, so thank you for the recipes. I mean, there's love in food. It brings us together.
Yes.
Thank you.
So you're looking well. I want to try that cake with you.
Okay.
You're gonna have to invite us over for that.
I'm gonna try it out. If it comes out well, I'll invite you guys. So thank you so much, Kennedy. You have a great day.
You too.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.